How much anyone will enjoy a particular series is, in part, a matter of perspective. What am I looking to get out of it, and how successful is it in delivering? Now, I do not have the same answer for every anime. Considering the sheer variety of what series and movies strive to achieve, it would be unjust and unfair to judge them all on the same universal criteria. Going even further, each anime can be viewed from multiple perspectives, and it's entirely possible that the set of expectations you keep in mind can influence the degree of enjoyment. Today in RedStripe Reviews is a sort of case study of that effect, as we look at Studio Bones' spring and summer 2014 mecha anime, Captain Earth. So, the beginning story. Years ago, when Daichi Manatsu was a wee lad, he spent a summer vacation in Tanegashima, where he met a blue-haired child, Teppei Arashi, at an abandoned installation. But Teppei was no ordinary child. He possessed otherworldly power, exemplified by the rainbow-colored halos he could form above his hands. The two immediately strike up an endearing friendship, and so afterwards, Teppei leads Daichi to a girl in a energy field, who's been asleep and couldn't be awoken. But amazingly, with both Teppei and Daichi around, she finally woke up. Hanamuto was her name. A few months later, however, Earth's fate ended up in peril when a bizarre AEO, or Approaching Earth Object, codenamed Kilt Gang, but henceforth referred to as a Kilt Gang, barrels towards the planet. Daichi's father, an astronaut tasked with planetary defense, stopped the threat by running his spaceship into a head-on collision with the Kilt Gang. It was a noble self-sacrifice, but also one that left Daichi fatherless and consequently split him from Teppei and Hana. Then, starting summer vacation in the present day, spurred on by flashbacks to those times with Teppei and Hana, he ends up at that same island and goes to that same installation, and lo and behold, after years of silence, a Kilt Gang attacks once again. In that moment, Daichi finds himself suddenly the owner of a phaser-looking thing called a Live Laster, which means that he holds the key to the robot in which he must get in, the Earth Engine. At this point, it's just boring shit, because the space mecha battle that ensues isn't all that exciting and has all the cliché. Plus, space looks a lot less gorgeous than the planet. But once the battle concludes and Daichi returns to Earth, he learns something momentous. Teppei and Hana are at the headquarters with who Daichi was cooperating, and joined one episode later by genius hacker Akari Yomatsuri, these four become the team entrusted with saving the Earth from the Kilt Gang threat. Within this framework, Captain Earth is a show that actually consists of two shows. The first 15 minutes of the first episode, along with the make-believe show that could have been, had it stayed on the same track, and the show we actually got, which officially started once Daichi Manatsu got in the robot. Now, if Captain Earth had remained in the same space as that introductory 15 minutes, presenting absolutely gorgeous visuals rife with rich coming-of-age themes, seemingly alien children with wondrous powers, and hints of sci-fi intrigue, it could have been an incredible series, easily Anime of the Year material. But that isn't what we ultimately get, because once the mecha officially come into play, the real series begins, and the awestruck tone goes right out the window. I had broadcasted the effect of the transition on me in the first watching block installment, and, to put it shortly, the experience was deflating, though at least the pictures were still largely mightily pretty. In retrospect, though, I was being a little unfair, looking at it the wrong way. If you were to judge the rest of the series based on the standard setup in the opening 15 minutes, then yes, Captain Earth falls terribly flat, and that's what I was doing at the time. But those standards are unreasonable in the grand scheme of the whole show. And once I started zeroing in on what Captain Earth actually was, go figure, it turned out to be a pretty damn enjoyable experience. So, to get one thing out of the way, are you looking for a piece of meaty science fiction or fantasy? Maybe even just a show that treats the concept of mecha with a marginal sense of groundedness? Then turn your eyes towards something like I'll Know Zero, or go even harder with Planetes instead, because if you try to pick Captain Earth apart as science fiction, you're most likely going to be unimpressed. And that would be entirely justifiable, because the sci-fi is utter nonsense, a total hodgepodge of random mechanics and lots, and I mean lots of important-sounding buzzwords. Live Laster, Kilt Gang, Orgone Energy, Machine Goodfellow, Libido, Telepathic Kisses, Ego Blocks, Neo Tennies, Arc Faction, Intercept Faction, The Bloom, Designer Children. I can't take it anymore! We didn't start the fire. Besides, when it really comes down to it, Captain Earth is essentially Gurren Lagann. The Live Laster might as well be the drill that pierces the heavens, and the analogs don't stop there, though it's perhaps more civilized, better dressed, and better mannered. Whereas Gurren Lagann is unapologetically off the walls, the party animal who turns up and lays waste to the night, Captain Earth tries to at least pass itself off as somewhat sane, being more so like the more proper chick, the one who you'd take home to your parents. But is that really an improvement? Because let me put it this way. One of these series has Kamina, and the other one doesn't. Also, feast your eyes on this. Somewhere in the world of Captain Earth, there's a pissed-off 5-year-old whose telephone was stolen. So I would say that doing things that way is wholly unnecessary, but once again, perspective, perspective, perspective. Captain Earth has its own singular charms that set it apart. There's plenty to like. First, it really bears repeating. The visuals are magnificent. The scenery in particular is spellbinding. The mecha designs are actually the weakest when it comes to looks, funnily enough, though they're still pretty aight. It's also pretty damn entertaining as an action series. Sure, I mentioned before not being so impressed with the space action at the beginning, but that thankfully gets markedly better shortly afterwards. And it later turns out that the action isn't centered exclusively on space battles. That's in parts because Daiichi's mecha and the antagonist's Kilt Gang mecha aren't merely space combat vehicles. The space form of the Earth engine, for example, is actually the result of a pretty epic parts combination sequence, but when left untransformed, it's a more reasonably sized mecha that can fight on ground. Which means, yes, holy of holies, there is a bunch of planetary mecha action, and it's a whole lot more interesting than the action in space. Some of it even on the No Shark Canals map from Battlefield 3. And not all of the action is even relegated to robot fighting matters, because due to the Live Blasters being able to also act like beam guns, there's also a dash of on-foot combat. Granted, this also means Captain Earth ends up being liberally derivative of a number of sources. In addition to the conceptual Gurren Lagann values, the ground mecha action has some serious Full Metal Panic vibes going on, and one of the major arcs is, interestingly enough, reminiscent of James Bond globetrotting antics. So, sure, there's a complaint to be made about the series not really doing anything much that's new, but you know what? Equal credit is due for being thieves with good taste, and for well-done execution. It's a tapestry of different influences that are well integrated enough to show few seams. The best aspect of Captain Earth, however, the one that had me looking forward the most to each new episode, were the core group of protagonists. To be clear though, as a whole, Captain Earth is actually rather spotty when it comes to the quality of the characters, and particularly weak when it comes to the antagonists, because with the exception of these two who were introduced later on, none of them are all that's likable or remotely interesting. Not the corporate's ne'er-do-well, not the Hal wannabe, not Team Rockets by way of Soul Leader, until the very end, not nobody. And from the supporting cast, only the governor of the space station Tenkaido and this particular one-off character end up having truly ample dimension. But, wow. Those 4 protagonists. Captain Earth is built to be a real pick-me-up, sunny in tone, and it succeeds splendidly on the backs of Daichi, Teppei, Hana, and Akari. Going back to the watching block, one of my biggest concerns at the beginning was the prospect of their characters being either derailed or put to the sidelines. That did not happen. For one, Daichi and Teppei have a friendship established from the first episode that not once ceases to be endearing and adorable, best exemplified with a friendly contest of one-upsmanship. Additionally, Akari is in a role that could very well have positioned herself as a grating presence, but her self-fashioned maho shoujo antics, belly button forte included, are ultimately winning, and how can you fault someone with such a kind heart? Or for showing touches of Radical Edward. Perhaps most noteworthy, though, is Hana. She could have been so easily screwed up, being in a role that could have positioned herself as the resident fan service sex symbol. Bones, in fact, tries their hardest to repeatedly and shamelessly do exactly that. And, well, on the one hand, speaking as a heterosexual man, she's probably as deserving of such a title as they come, because, real talk, Hana is gorgeous. Top candidate for Hottest Waifu 2014, and I'm not going to fault Bones for being fully aware of what they've got. But on the other hand, all of the innocently erotic situation comedy, the multiple times they stick her in a tight bikini or some other overly tight outfit, shot after shot after shot of panning up and down and around her naked body, it happens way too much, believe me. It's creepy, distracting, just plain uncomfortable to experience. It even got me to feel bad for her for being subjected to such downright voyeuristic tendencies. For fuck's sake, Bones, for fuck's sake, ecchi fans, no one needs to take the male gaze that far to get across the point that Hana is a bomb babe. One shot of her in her white dress already says it all. Why take on all of the objectification bullshit from going much farther? So, really, it's a testament to how well done Hana is as a character that those creepy tendencies can't derail her. She may be built on the pure innocent girl archetype, fundamentally speaking, But there are some wrinkles to the characterization that take her beyond being cookie-cutter and make her more compelling. The most notable way this manifests is in how Hana is not a prude, and I don't mean in that innocently, comedically erotic way. Her purity status does not carry along the usual baggage of being embarrassed or even remotely awkward when it comes to sexuality. It's not a corrupting influence, and in fact, Hana can be surprisingly on the nose about having a libido. But none of that is depicted as contradictory to her status as a pure girl. And when it comes to the scheme of male fantasy action shows about giant robots beating each other up, that's a strikingly progressive and nuanced approach to characterization. It makes her feel that much more natural as a result, more human. And there's something very positive about those connotations. Sure, it may seem like a small detail, but to me, it's a big signifier of Captain Earth's heart truly being in the right place. To whoever was responsible for writing Hanamuto, you've done rather nicely. Finally, going outside of the team of 4 as individuals, they are also just plain a fun time as a collective unit. Seeing them hang out, grow close, and work together was my primary reason for going through all 25 episodes of Captain Earth, even after a period where I fell so far behind, and I mean by more than 10 episodes. And that leads us to the conclusion. Captain Earth is not a standout piece of science fiction by any means, either in terms of concept or story, plus also being rather derivative to boot. Being buoyed by some utterly fantastic visuals and entertaining on the eyes action would appear to cement this series as an empty, shiny suit, all style, no soul. From that perspective, Captain Earth is a wash, and I've got no disagreement for anybody who dislikes it because of that perspective. However, it's also got tons of happy-go-lucky charm, courtesy of a 4-man band of heroes who are impossible to dislike. That is the saving grace which ultimately won me over personally, because Captain Earth's best look is as a piece of unabashed feel-good entertainment. That does it for the review. Thank you for watching. Chime in via the comments if you've also seen Captain Earth and have some thoughts of your own. Also, time permitting, there are a bunch of other shows that ended in the summer season that I'm hoping to do reviews for as well, namely Glass Slip, Aldnoah Zero, and Baby Steps, so perhaps look for those as well at some future dates. This has been Justin, now signing off.